is a young female journalist, conservative journalist by the name of Laura Loomer.
If America's men acted like Laura Loomer, our problems will be fixed in about 5 minutes.
Chained herself to
She
Twitter.
chained herself.
Good evening and welcome to episode 124 of Loomer Unleashed. I'm your host, Laura Loomer. We are live right now on Rumble and X, so please be sure you head on over to rumble.com/Laura Loomer and click the follow button so that you can follow my account, and be sure that you download the Rumble app and enable notifications on your phone so that you never miss an episode of Loomer Unleashed. Also, if you want to support the show, you can click the Get Loomered button on my Rumble channel, which will take you to my locals page where you can subscribe to support for $7 a month or $70 per year. We are an independent publication here, and so it's your support that allows us to continue being uncensored and unleashed and unafraid, so that we can bring you the truth and bring you the stories that you're really not going to hear on the mainstream media, in addition to the dialogue that you are also going to hear on a conservative podcast. A lot of conservatives like to go along and play the game, right? So they can get invited to all the parties and play nice in the sandbox, as they say. But we speak the truth here at Loomer Unleashed, and it's all thanks to you, our viewers, who help us stay independent. I'm also live on X, so please be sure that you retweet the live stream. We stream every Tuesday and Thursday live on X and Rumble. Also be sure you're following me on X at Laura Loomer and at Loomer Unleashed. We have 3 guests tonight, so stay tuned. It's going to be a busy, but also very educational show tonight. We have a lot to talk about. The second hour of the show, for all my animal lovers out there, is going to be dedicated to all of the amazing legislation that is being passed right now here in the state of Florida, where I live, and also all of the efforts that are being carried out by the Trump administration to crack down on animal testing. We're going to be joined by our friends at White Coat Waste, and also by my friend, Florida State Representative Meg Weinberger, who's going to talk about her animal cruelty law that Ron DeSantis just signed into law. And then we're also going to be joined by our friends over at BitChute, who are going to talk to us about the draconian efforts in the UK, which will, undoubtedly make their way here to the United States unless we start cracking down on big tech censorship and censorious regimes and foreigners who want to censor the rights, especially the First Amendment rights of Americans. We're going to talk about the Online Safety Act in the UK and how it's threatening big tech social media platforms into submission unless they silence online users. And BitChute is refusing to do that. And so we're going to hear from them tonight. But I want to get started on an update to what we were talking about on Tuesday's show. And that, of course, President Trump has decided to ban Harvard from enrolling foreign students. He also defunded them on the federal level. And when the State Department and President Trump released statements about why they were going after the foreign students at Harvard, which makes up 31% of the Harvard admissions rate, if you didn't see President Trump's speech about this from the Oval Office, it's an astounding 31% of Harvard students are international, right? Foreign visa holding students. Pretty crazy. That's 31% of their student body that could otherwise be American, but American students are being denied these opportunities so that hostile foreigners from China, a lot of whom are CCP spies or Islamic jihadists or people who hold anti-American sentiment, are studying at Harvard. President Trump and the State Department announced that Under his administration, the visas of Chinese students who have affiliations with the CCP, and let's be honest, it's pretty much all of them, over 250,000 current visa holders from China studying here at universities and colleges across our country. We have some reports on this. U.S. to begin revoking visas for Chinese students. I've been calling for this for a long time. I mean, you know, here at Loomer Unleashed, we're pretty anti-China. We're pretty anti-CCP. And it's been a long time coming, right? Over 250,000 Chinese students. That's incredible. 250,000 student visa holders studying in universities across our country. Let's scroll down and take a look at this article, and we can review the details in case you missed it. The U.S. will begin revoking visas for Chinese students, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced on Wednesday. The big picture, the move marks a major escalation in the Trump administration's immigration crackdown and comes one day after Rubio directed a halt to student visa interviews. One senior Trump administration official confirmed to Axios that the order applies to all students from China, noting that Rubio's announcement coincides with trade negotiations between the two countries. Everything is connected. This is fabulous because, let's be honest, who is sending their children to study here in the United States of America from China? Well, CCP officials. It's pretty crazy to think that we're in the middle of a trade war with China, and they're being incredibly hostile towards the Trump administration as it relates to the ongoing trade war. They are incredibly hostile as it relates to trade secrets and stealing information, hacking into government officials' devices, their phones. This is ongoing, right? And it exceeds all the way to the White House as well. When I talk about the level of hacking, I'm talking about Chinese officials earlier in the year hacked the personal devices, the computers and the phones of Janet Yellen, you'll recall. We can get that article up. It's several months old, right? But they even tried to hack White House officials. And there's been countless reports about this, and a lot of this information hasn't been released to the public. But it is well known that the Chinese Communist Party and the government of China is actively, I would say it's on a pretty constant basis, trying to hack our databases, disrupt our infrastructure, and dominate our technological spaces, brainwash our youth. Look what they're doing with TikTok, right? Chinese hackers accessed Yellen's computer in U.S. Treasury breach, Bloomberg News reports. This is ongoing. The FBI actually has an entire division dedicated to cyber hacks from foreign actors. And guess which countries are the most active as it relates to hacking U.S. devices? The Iranians and the Chinese, right? You could ask anybody who works at the FBI, they'll tell you the same thing. The Iranians and the Chinese are constantly trying to hack the devices. And so you have to ask yourself, what is the point of allowing for 250,000 students every single year from China to study here in our country in elite institutions, taking up spots in colleges, in universities where American students are now not being able to access those universities or those colleges because, well, a foreigner or a student from China is taking their spot? Why are we allowing them to come and study in our elite institutions and get degrees and learn things in our scientific laboratories in many of these very elite institutions like Harvard, Columbia, Yale, MIT, and so on? If they're just going to go back to China and utilize the information that they learned here in the United States of America to support the CCP or to support Islamic regimes or to work against the interests of the United States of America. This is an asinine policy to continue to allow these people to invade our country and invade our educational institutions that are now essentially communist Marxist indoctrination camps. Is it any wonder that colleges and universities all throughout our country are indoctrinating young people to become communists when you have 250,000 young people, young students from China, right, where you have to have devotion to the CCP in China. You want to do business in China, you have to support the CCP. Do you really honestly think that when these people come to our country that they're going to lose their allegiance to the CCP? No, they're going to take that allegiance with them. And that is why we have been completely infiltrated and completely encapsulated in this nation by what they call the fifth column. And so if you're not familiar with the fifth column, you need to read up on that. We have some comments, statements released by CCP officials. CCP spokeswoman decided to post a video on X. She's not too happy about this. Let's go ahead and play this video before we bring our guest in. This is the spokesperson for the Chinese Communist Party who, she's the one who releases all these statements. Her name is Lin Jian. She releases all of the virtual statements and social media posts on X and Facebook and Instagram. And she's very active on social media where she attacks President Trump and his policies on a daily basis. Let's go ahead and play the clip.
美方以意识形态和国家安全为借口，无理取消中国留学生签证，严重损害中国留学生的合法权益，干扰两国正常人文交流。中方对此坚决反对，已向美方提出交涉。美方这一政治性、歧视性做法，戳穿了美国一贯标榜的所谓自由开放谎言，只会进一步损害美国的自身国际形象和国家信誉。
We also have a clip from Florida Senator Ashley Moody, who went on Newsmax and was speaking out about how Chinese nationals are required by law in China to gather and provide intelligence to the CCP when they're on a student visa, in case anybody wants to jump on the bandwagon to falsely accuse the Trump administration of being racist or xenophobic or hateful towards Chinese students. As I said before, you have to have this allegiance to the CCP. And so it's pretty safe to assume that if you're here on a student visa from China, you are acting as an agent of the CCP. Let's go ahead and play clip number 7.
And this should shock no one. So the report came out. It said right now in the United States of America, at one of our universities, there is an organized, orchestrated spy ring. To put this in perspective, when I got here, I said, when I was told that there was a Chinese law in place that required Chinese nationals, including students that come to the United States on visas, and by the way, we take 300,000 Chinese students a year into our universities. There's a law in the books that says they have to provide intelligence gathering and information to the CCP. We also had information in Congress before I even got here that they were setting up these programs to organize spies and push them into our universities using visas. And when I got here and realized that there was no law stopping the visa program, even though we had that information, I immediately launched a bill that would end visas for Chinese students. Now, nothing against Chinese students that want to learn, but if you have a government that is enlisting them, and not just enlisting them, requiring them by law under penalty to be espionage agents when they get here, we cannot keep inviting them into our nation. And so time after time over the last few years, we have found Chinese students with drones, cameras on our military bases, stealing information at our universities, and nothing has been done. So when this report came out 2 days ago, I was not surprised because we launched this bill and we've been advocating and trying to get someone's attention that there were spy rings here right now. Now, hopefully, we will see some action not only by the university that's been informed of this, where their students saying it's happening, but by the government to do an investigation.
A lot more people should be talking about this. And one of the people who's extremely outraged over the fact that President Trump has revoked these visas from Chinese students is the president of Harvard. And of course, the president of Harvard is reacting in this manner because, well, President Trump not only defunded Harvard on the federal level, but he banned them from enrolling all foreign students, let alone Chinese students. And so we have this clip from the Harvard president. And a lot of people don't know this. It's something that I've been really blowing the whistle on. Xi Jinping, right? The leader of the Communist Party of China. His daughter actually went to Harvard. And Loomer Unleashed has discovered that his daughter still actually lives in Massachusetts with her husband, where she is actively protected by PLA officers, right? People's Liberation Army officers, the military branch of the Chinese Communist Party. So the fact that they're able to have their own communist police force here on U.S. soil protecting the daughter of Xi Jinping, who attended Harvard, and now Harvard wants to criticize Trump for revoking Chinese visas. Well, it's part of the problem, right? Why did Harvard even allow for Xi Jinping's daughter? In what world are we in in the middle of a trade war with China. And Xi Jinping's daughter is allowed to not only study in the United States of America, she studied several years ago, to be fair, but then live here in the United States of America. That's why I personally called for her deportation. The story's gone viral. It's all over Newsmax. Before we bring our next guest in, we're just going to play this clip of Harvard president criticizing President Trump for revoking Chinese visas.
Path-marking scholar of Asian American lives, spanning literature and art, labor and gender, dynamic in devotion to building community. She sees that making waves can help raise the tide. Elaine H. Kim, Doctor of Laws.
Well, it appears that part of that clip may have been cut off. We're going to play the rest of the clip for you later. But it was a whole clip about the Harvard president criticizing President Trump for revoking these Chinese student visas. So perhaps that got mixed up when we were doing all the prep for the show earlier. But there's a longer clip of the president of Harvard criticizing President Trump for revoking these Chinese visas. And ultimately, Harvard needs to exercise some personal accountability. As we showed you on the show on Tuesday night, Harvard has been involved in many scandals involving the CCP, including one of their own lab employees who was indicted by the DOJ and was secretly getting paid $50,000 a month to share secrets with the Chinese Communist Party. He served time in prison as well. So Harvard cannot pretend to be oblivious to this. They allow for Xi Jinping's daughter to attend university classes there, and they also have had some of their own staff and students indicted for acting as agents of the CCP. So pretty serious situation. And it's not just Harvard. Harvard is probably the most glaring example, right? Because they are known as, well, the most elite institution in our country. But every single college or university in our country has problems with their international students. I mean, we've seen this all across our country, especially with the rise of the anti-Semitic, pro-Palestinian movements. We saw it at Columbia. We've seen it at state colleges, community colleges. It doesn't matter. The Ivy Leagues, of course, get the most attention because it's been sensationalized, rightfully so, by members of Congress, because we send the Ivy Leagues billions of dollars of our taxpayer money every single year. But whether it's Muslim jihadi students chanting "Kill all Jews, long live Hamas," as we documented on the campus of Columbia, or it's CCP spies operating out of the science labs at Harvard, and you know, the daughter of the leader of the Chinese Communist Party attending classes at Harvard. This is a systemic problem that really has been happening for decades in our country. And President Trump is the only one who has the courage to address it, and the only president that has the courage to put a stop to it. And so we thank President Trump for that. All right, joining me now to discuss the Online Safety Act and the continued suppression of free speech and the censorship regime that is being carried out in Europe, especially in the United Kingdom, is Jeffrey Wernick, longtime friend of mine, but also a diehard free speech advocate, probably one of the biggest fighters in our country, one of the biggest financial backers of free speech platforms and free speech advocacy. He's also a private investor for BitChute, which is one of the only, in addition to Rumble, of course, true free speech platforms out there. So, Jeffrey, it's great to have you on the program tonight. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, Laura. It's really nice to see you again. I think many people don't know that you and I have a relationship dating back maybe 7-8 years.
Yeah, known you for a long time, and you've always been true to the cause. And you know, you're a very humble guy, I will say. Your name's not out there in the media every single day, but for those of you who aren't familiar with Jeffrey, he's one of the biggest supporters and biggest backers and really one of the biggest defenders of free speech, and a lot of your favorite platforms that many of you use, especially Parler. Unfortunately, Parler was completely destroyed in the aftermath of J6. But when big tech was beginning their censorship regime and their crusade to silence and deplatform conservatives and Trump supporters, Jeffrey was one of the main financial supporters and investors in a lot of this technology to support free speech platforms. He supported my congressional campaign when I was the first and only deplatform platformed candidate running for Congress in the nation, and he has continued to invest his own personal money and wealth into fighting for the free speech rights of all of you watching, right? So that you can fight back against big tech censorship. So thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you for those kind words. And yes, I think for people who don't know who I am, which is probably almost everybody watching, you know, and I don't recall if you were the one that facilitated the initial contact with Andrew Torbett, Gab, but you know, I began communications in 2019 with both Andrew Torbett at Gab and John Mates at Parler, and you and I had a lot of conversations regarding your efforts to help both Gab and Parler grow. And at the point in time when I first got involved in Parler, you were the most followed person on Parler. You were the most influential person on Parler, and there was nobody more committed to helping Parler grow than you in the beginning of 2020. You know, when nobody was paying attention to Parler, you were one of the few people that were paying attention to Parler and really put a lot of time and effort, and you were always accessible to communicate with and share ideas of what we can do to help together have Parler grow. But you know, in 2020, I funded Gab when, which I'm pretty sure again the introduction was from you, and at that point in time, Torber came to me saying that he needed money for independent servers. And also to bring in some engineers that wanted to see a stronger balance sheet. So I don't remember. I think I gave about $600,000. You know, whatever he asked for is what I gave, and I didn't even do any really significant due diligence except to the extent to see his commitment to free speech. So it's not like I did a lot of business due diligence. And the same with Parler. My investment was not a financial investment, you know, even though I gave money, but I was investing in a movement to the people who at that point in time seemed the most committed to you know, free speech absolutism. So I gave money at almost the same time to Parler and Gab, and the people at Gab knew I gave to Parler, and the people at Parler knew I gave to Gab. So this was very, very transparent. And when I got involved, Gab was really not very interested in my mentorship, just my money. Parler was actually more interested in my mentorship than my money, but they were interested in both. So I became very intimately involved in Parler, and that's why you and I had a lot more conversations about Parler than Gab, because Gab didn't really welcome as much my involvement, and Parler, you know, encouraged my involvement, and that's why you and I had a lot of conversations. And basically, I chose to disassociate myself with Parler in 2021 when Parler made the decision to try and appease Apple. I had no interest in appeasing Apple because I was not going to relinquish my principles with respect to free speech, and I was not prepared to accept, you know, the type of terms of service that Apple required Parler to get in the store. I could understand why Parler made the decision to do that. It was a business decision, and they thought it was in the best interest of the business. But I was always more interested in the movement than the business. So I was not as interested in the business. So I wasn't as interested in staying around. And then because of I guess whatever limited reputation I achieved through my involvement and engagement in Parler, the people in BitChute, when they needed money, reached out to me, and I introduced them to a few friends, and you know, and we all put money, you know, into BitChute, and so and you've always been a great help, and you are, you know, I think with respect to really being there with respect to principles, with respect to free speech, you know, you're one of the few people that you can really count on, you know, that you say what you mean and you mean what you say. And you and I know we've had a lot of conversations about some of the people that I used to call free speech frauds, which I think are most of the free speech advocates, I think, are free speech frauds. Mm-hmm. And I also have high regard for Chris at Rumble. Actually, Chris and I are partners in a business, the parallel economy payment processing.
Chris loves you. I remember when I told him, I said, oh, you know, I brought your name up one day. I was like, Jeffrey Wernick. And he was like, oh my God, Jeffrey Wernick. So yeah, Chris is great. He's doing fabulous work. And Chris is also very committed and is somebody who's not backing down. And I know that he could have had a lot easier time, right, with the business of Rumble had he made concessions. But he has really fought the good fight and has been ostracized in some social circles. I know Chris and I talk about this often, but it's because he really is a true free speech absolutist. Rumble, along with BitChute, and now I guess X, well, hasn't always been the case, right? But especially after I pissed Elon Musk off, it's really the only sites that people can find me on, because I still remain banned on every other site. I mean, you're not going to find me on Facebook, and I don't use YouTube because they completely silenced me and have demonetized me. And so BitChute, Rumble, it's really the only two true free speech absolutist platforms. And then, of course, X has made a lot of headway in being more committed to free speech. But you will definitely not find a greater level of free speech than what you will find on BitChute and Rumble.
Yes, I have a lot of respect for Chris, and he's been a great partner in the parallel economy. So it's great to be partners with him, and I have really tremendous respect for Chris, and really much congratulations to him for all that he's accomplished at Rumble. So, but I appreciate you giving me this time, to talk about the Online Safety Act. Many people watching might be saying, why am I talking to an American audience about, the oppression, suppression of free speech in the UK? And the reason is pretty simple. BitChute made a decision, at my urging, but ultimately supported by all the partners, that when the Online Safety Act began to be implemented, when we got notifications at BitChute, and that notification was shared with me, that I felt that the regime of surveillance and suppression of free speech was a regime that I told BitChute that we should not be a part of, and we had a discussion that really was not a long discussion, because we reached a consensus pretty quickly that that may be the best way to fight back against these laws. And I have great respect for the speech that J.D. Vance gave in Germany, where he talked about how European nations have abandoned Western civilization principles, and now you see that the Trump administration has tried to be pushing back against countries that are suppressing people's free speech, and freedom of speech and freedom of reach, and so the administration is also trying to take its stand and trying to negotiate it as part of the trade negotiations. But ultimately, I think in a sovereign country made up of sovereign individuals, ultimately the power resides within the people. And I think it's a matter of that we shouldn't wait for government to do things, even if the government wants to do the right thing. Sometimes we have to take things in our own hands. And the decision we made at BitChute was, after examining the law, we decided that the best way to respond to the law is we shut BitChute off for the UK audience, but for viewing content, because we did not want to because if we accepted the regime, then I view us as being a collaborator or an enabler of the regime. At some point you have to take a stand and say, I'm not going to do this, because even though BitChute was founded by 2 UK nationals and has a large UK audience, so I think we might have lost, over 500,000.
Can you explain to some people, because I know that J.D. Vance highlighted this when he gave his speech in front of European Union officials, and he really condemned them heavily, and quite it was like watching a parent give a child a spanking. kind of spank them on the global stage over their actions to censor speech. But can you just explain to people some of the draconian aspects of the Online Safety Act? Because, of course, it's always a game of semantics where they try to say things like, oh, we're doing this to protect children from harmful online content, so that your average person thinks, well, of course we want to protect children from harm, right? But it's a lot more sinister than that, because when they talk about protecting children from harm, right, this also extends to adults, and this isn't just about hiding pornographic content or things like that. No, they're talking about hate speech and what they perceive as hateful conduct. And we know that if you misgender somebody in the UK, you can actually be fined and sent to prison. And if you say something offensive about somebody's religion or their ethnic background in the UK, you can also spend time in prison. We just saw Tommy Robinson get released from prison in the UK 2 days ago for making a documentary about a Syrian Muslim migrant who was involved in a bullying scandal in the UK. And so whether you're a journalist like Tommy Robinson is, I've seen stories about young mothers who had to go to jail because they accidentally misgendered someone, and then Child Protective Services took their children from them. You really have a very draconian speech system that is governed by the UK government, and they're disguising it as an Online Safety Act, and they have an organization called Ofcom. So two things. I want you to explain what the Online Safety Act is doing in a censorious manner, and then also what the role of Ofcom is, and what their actions toward BitChute
Ofcom is responsible for implementing the Online Safety Act. And the Online Safety Act basically, as quite often, parliamentary or legislative bodies do, they say, they write something. I mean, you think about, like in the U.S., what was the Obamacare was known as the Affordable Care Act. Only health care became less affordable, and less accessible, but they still call it the Affordable Care Act. So I think politicians always do a good job of naming things that don't really represent what the bills actually accomplish, but they try and put lipstick on a pig by putting a nice name on it, But the Online Safety Act is basically, first and foremost, it's a surveillance regime that requires you to do a lot more surveillance over your platform. So and not just with respect to minors. Like the part about with respect to minors was irrelevant to BitChute, because I think the minimum age for being downloading and interacting with BitChute is 16-year-old. So it's not like there are minors on and BitChute bans pornography. So we didn't exit because we were concerned about those aspects of it, but because we know that the Online Safety Act, while that's the name, it wants to keep the ruling class safe from criticism. I mean, that's that's the ones who want to be protected are them, not the people. So they want to protect themselves from any sort of narrative that represents a threat to the narrative that they want to dominate. And like we experienced during the COVID period, when people got banned for that medicine was Fauci, and if you were not Fauci, then you were a fake scientist, and you were not allowed to post content, and you were called all sorts of horrible names, deplatformed, demonetized, and we did that under state emergency. So if we think about how the type of banning that was going on and censorship that was going on during the COVID period by platforms, the Online Safety Act takes that and puts it on steroids and implements it the whole time. So basically, it gives Ofcom great discretion to determine what they think is appropriate content, and if you don't remove content that they think is inappropriate, that they will then impose very large fines on you. So we did not exit at BitChute because we were concerned about the fines. We just don't want to cooperate with the government. We think the only way to stop governments, because what happens is and you and I had this conversation, years ago, that, first Alex Jones gets banned, and then you get banned, and they start saying, gee, Alex Jones is extreme, and then Laura Loomer is extreme, and then suddenly they're banning thousands of people, because they're testing. If I can get away with this, Let me check the boundary and see what more I can get away with, and let me check the boundary. And you and I had a lot of conversations about that, is that the people who didn't defend you when you were banned might find one day that they're banned, and they're not going to be happy about them being banned while they remain silent when you were banned, which is why it's so important. Once one person is banned, it's so important to speak out, because it shouldn't be about whether we like or dislike that person. What we should dislike is the concept of banning people because they say something that's offensive. The whole reason we have free speech is the fact is that we need to protect the speech that actually is offensive, because if not, we wouldn't need an amendment regarding free speech, to protect speech that people like listening to. So what we need to protect, what needs most protection, is the speech we don't like. So that's what needs protection. So that's the whole point of free speech, is to challenge us to accept things that make us feel uncomfortable. And the Online Safety Act empowers Ofcom to remove all content, that will make Ofcom or anyone in government feel uncomfortable. So
have you had any conversations with the State Department about how their new statement that they released 2 days ago regarding their new plan to revoke the visas or block the travel of foreigners to the United States of America who censor Americans? I don't know if you saw this, but this was a new policy
I read that,
implemented by the State
so
Department, and perhaps the State Department could issue letters targeting the representatives of Ofcom, right, or the creators of the Online Safety Act, to let them know that if they continue this censorious behavior, that they are also not going to be able to travel to the United States, because BitChute, as you said, has a large UK audience, but you have people all over the world that utilize BitChute, including American citizens. And so I would think that would fall under the realm of what the State Department is talking about when they talk about foreign actors trying to censor people's free speech rights.
Well, we had what we've done at BitChute is we're allowing anyone to put up content from the UK, but whatever content they put up can be seen everywhere except the UK.
Right, but in your conversations with have you had conversations with the State Department since they issued this statement this week pertaining to crackdowns on foreigners who try to censor people's rights and censor people's free speech?
I think my skepticism of it, one is I'm apolitical, so I like to take responsibility myself rather than ask other people to solve my problems. So I'm not big, and I don't want government solving my problems. I want to solve my own problems. So since I'm as you're aware, I have anarchistic tendencies. I'm an anarcho-capitalist or a crypto anarchist. Since as you know, I've been a long-time holder of Bitcoin. I'm a hodler. I'm an accumulator and a hodler of Bitcoin, and so I believe in a limited, maybe a minarchist or an anarchist with respect to what the role of government is in. So I generally like to solve my own problems rather than solicit government's help, because I think that's what it means to be a sovereign individual, is you don't make your problem other people's problems. So and I see it hard to implement. Independent of that, I also see it hard to implement. I think it's nice intentions, but ultimately, this legislation gets authorized by the prime minister. So it gets voted on by the parliament. You can't blame the bureaucrats who are responsible for implementing legislation that the law requires them to implement. Their job is to implement what they're told they're implemented, and that's their job. So, it's the same perception that, the Trump administration expects, or any administration expects from, their quote bureaucracy, is the instructions come from the top, and the people that are below are not supposed to question it. Their job is to execute. So Ofcom is there to execute. So of course Ofcom has been given, extraordinary powers and with respect to the discretion they have, and how they execute it. But ultimately, who conveyed that power to them, was the British Parliament and the British Prime Minister. So who are you going to hold responsible for it? You're going to hold the British Prime Minister responsible and not allow the British Prime Minister to come to the U.S. while you're trying to negotiate a trade deal. I mean, I don't think it's works. Who's known also for looking to ban a lot of content. Is Modi in India? Is Rubio going to ban Modi from coming to the United States? So I see the implementation very hard, because you really can't blame the bureaucrat who's doing what they're instructed to do. And if they don't do it, they'll get fired, and somebody else will come and replace them to do it. So the question is, who should be held responsible for it? What I'm calling for is that every other platform should do what BitChute did, is boycott the UK. So that's what I'm here on your show, and I'm so appreciative of you giving me this opportunity. But I'm calling on Chris, on Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg, and every other platform out there to boycott the UK. I believe if everyone took the same stand as BitChute has taken, which is saying is, we're not gonna comply with these rules. We're not gonna be a collaborator with you. We're not gonna be an enabler of this law. Instead, we're exiting the market. If every one of these platforms exited the market, I don't think you'd need Rubio or Trump calling them up. I think the UK people would be so upset at having no access to Twitter, no access to Rumble, no access to True Social.
Have you had any conversations with anybody from, well, I mean, Chris, obviously you're friends with Chris, but have you had any conversations with Rumble or any Truth Social executives or anybody from X to discuss a coordinated boycott?
I'm hoping that they will watch this show tonight and they'll think it's a good idea. I haven't.
Well, we'll clip it. We're going to clip it,
Yeah.
and we'll tag Elon, we'll tag Chris, and we'll get it to everybody over at True Social too.
But that's the appeal I want to make, is for all the platforms. We need to stop this. Okay, if we really believe in free speech, the question is, what are we willing to sacrifice to support free speech? Now, has this cost BitChute money to sacrifice its user engagement by having people who are actively engaged no longer actively engaged? Yes, we have. Does that bother us? Really, no, because we think we're fighting a good principled fight, and so we didn't make a business decision. We made a principled decision, because we have to put a stop to these regimes. And the only way to stop the regimes, in my opinion, is to boycott them. You have to take responsibility yourself. If the problem is important to you, you don't wait for somebody else to solve the problem. You take responsibility yourself. Of course, if help wants to come along, it's welcome. So to the extent that anyone who wants to help in this process, they're more than welcome. So if everything that the Trump administration is attempting to do, to have voices not silenced, I support and I respect and I appreciate. But I'm not deferring to them or any other third party. I'm not delegating to any third party the fight. I'm taking the fight on myself, and I'm appealing to other people to join in that fight with me. We should boycott the UK, and we should boycott every regime that attempts to do. As long as we don't act, if we act together, okay, every platform acts together, okay, we can beat these laws. But if we don't act together, the laws will beat us. And
I agree with you. We have a video here too from the founder and the CEO of BitChute, Ray Vahi, talking about Ofcom and the decision of BitChute to boycott the UK. So I want to go ahead and play this for everybody.
Ofcom continues to contact us about their censorship and surveillance regulation in what we see as a blatant effort to make us compromise our principles, which we will never do. Our reply to Ofcom is linked below this video. They have come up with what we believe is an absurd and ridiculous definition of user-to-user platform, seemingly looking to bring whoever they choose into their regime and make every platform subject to it. Let me be clear, we will not allow Ofcom any pretext, no matter how absurd, to subject us to their regime. We believe no one should. This regime is so hostile to free speech and privacy that every platform should leave the UK, not only to protect UK users, but to protect users worldwide. BitChute has operated in the UK for years, but now the only moral solution is to leave. This is a choice between freedom and totalitarianism. Continuing to operate under Ofcom and the OSA can only bring us closer to the latter. Tell other platforms, do not be an enabler, do not be a collaborator. By remaining in the UK, they are subjecting you, their users all around the world, to this censorship and surveillance. If enough platforms leave, the UK government will have no choice but to back down. Thank you to everyone who has supported us. We won't give in. We are committed to upholding free speech and privacy. Help us spread this message.
And I just retweeted that video. So for all of you who are watching this stream live right now, help them spread their message. You can also retweet that video. You can also get a BitChute account. I have a BitChute account. I don't feel like there's anything you can really do to get banned on BitChute. I mean, really, truly, if you want to have a free speech platform, BitChute is the platform for you. Of course, Rumble is also a very pro-free speech platform. But in terms of true free speech absolutism, as I said, BitChute and Rumble are really the only two free speech absolutist platforms out there. I think that, you know, X is great. I'm grateful that I have my X platform again, but given my own experiences on X, especially over the last few months when everybody saw me very publicly get demonetized and shadow banned for simply criticizing Elon Musk, I would not say that X is a true free speech absolutist platform. I think that Elon has made great strides in exposing the Twitter files and giving a lot of people who were previously banned access to their accounts again, but they still comply with a lot of rules, especially to appease advertisers. And that's not the definition of free speech absolutism. Now, he has a business to run and that's his choice. That's not necessarily a criticism. That's just a fact. And so as it relates to true free speech absolutism, Rumble and BitChute are your best options. Jeffrey, any last words, any last comments? What's your call to action to the viewers? We have about 45,000 live viewers right now who are watching, who can take action. I know a lot of people who follow me live in the UK, live abroad. What is your parting words for people watching and how they can encourage their lawmakers to speak out against this?
I would encourage everyone to get VPNs, so they can take more control over their privacy, and make it harder for governments to figure out where they're domiciled, and through VPNs they could have greater freedom of access to platforms because they can mask their locations. So I encourage everybody to take as many measures as they can to protect their privacy and not let people geolocate them. So that's the first message that I think people should take. I think everybody who really cares about this should be writing whoever their representatives are, and making their voice get heard. That it's not a matter of depriving people of their free speech. You're also depriving the people who want to listen to that speech, of listening to something that they might find interesting. And government should have no role in interfering with the communications on peer-to-peer communications. And I think that people should be very outspoken about the fact is that the only effective way to deal with what people talk about as being hate speech is more speech. So you don't solve the problem. I think practically speaking, many people think there's a growth of hate speech, and I think there's a correlation between the growth of hate speech and the growth of censorship. So it's not like somebody wakes up and says, "Gee, I have these feelings and I'm expressing my honest feelings, and now I'm going to feel better." Knowing that I've been deplatformed and demonetized and dehumanized and demonized, and that's going to make me feel better and make me a better human being. No, it's counterproductive. So I think as a tactic, as a principle, it's wrong, and as a tactic, it's counterproductive. So that these platforms, so we should keep focusing on the idea is that the best way to deal with speech that someone doesn't like is to come up with better speech. Okay, we should compete in the competition for ideas, in the marketplace of ideas. And when somebody has a bad idea, you point it out, and hopefully you can win the debate of ideas. And if we're going to have a civil society, we don't have a civil society by shutting people up. Okay, we have a civil society by never stopping to engage in discourse, and that's what BitChute represents, and that's clearly the values I have had, because I'm the only person out there who has funded 3 of the most free speech platforms. I'm the only one that's put up money into platforms nobody else would write a check for, and so I'm very passionate about this, and as Laura well knows. And I really and I think people who believe in free speech should support every free speech platform. They should be on Rumble. My advice, my last words are this: be on every platform that accepts Laura Loomer, and don't support any platform that doesn't accept Laura Loomer. That's my last piece of advice.
Yeah. So basically, X, BitChute, and Rumble. And who knows how long I'll last on X, right? So exactly. Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to create BitChute accounts, where do they go? How do they follow you? And what's the best way that they can continue following updates from BitChute as they continue to fight for free speech on a global level?
I think the best place is to go to bitchute.com and open up an account. I don't post content, so it's hard to follow me. So because I don't really I support free speech, but I don't necessarily promote my own content. So I like to engage in conversation with my friends on a personal basis, but I don't really enjoy so much the impersonal dialogue. Here I'm happy to be here because Laura, you and I have been friends for quite a while, and you're authentic, and in a world of people who are inauthentic, and so I have great appreciation, independent of whatever his ideology is. What I most appreciate people is authenticity, and you're authentic. So people should just go to bitchute.com and they should follow Laura Loomer, among others, and Ray Vahey, the founder, on BitChute. And if you have any questions or need help, reach out directly to Ray.
Yeah. And you can see on the bottom of the screen here live on the show, we have a BitChute ticker, and we have for a long time now. And that's where people can go if they want to see my BitChute channel as well. BitChute.com/Laura Loomer. Every single episode of this show is uploaded and updated every single episode on BitChute's website. So definitely check it out if you haven't already done so. It's a great platform. Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. You're always welcome to come on the show anytime you want to talk about these issues. And I really appreciate everything that you and Ray are doing to fight for free speech.
Thank you so much, Laura. You're very generous.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. Have a great night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So there you have it, you guys. And you may think that, oh, well, I don't live in the UK. Why should I care about this? Because what is happening in the UK could come to our country too. We're very grateful that we're very lucky that President Trump won this election, because if President Trump had not won the 2024 presidential election, I can guarantee you, I can promise you that we would have seen very similar policies like the UK's Online Safety Act implemented here in the United States. We already know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris wanted to have misinformation czars. They wanted to crack down on free speech. And in fact, they did crack down on free speech. It's all starting to come out now, right? We saw just a few days ago that Tulsi Gabbard over at DNI released confirmation confirming the fact that the Biden administration did in fact designate a lot of the doctors and people who were blowing the whistle on alternative therapies to treat COVID, people who were opposed to the vaccine. They classified them as extremists, as terrorists, and they actually asked from the White House for social media companies to silence and censor these individuals, just like they asked them to silence and censor people who were talking about the Hunter Biden laptop, right? We already know this. Elon Musk exposed this. We had testimony from Mark Zuckerberg. So it's all out there. It's not a conspiracy theory. And I can guarantee you that if it weren't for President Trump and JD Vance, they would have absolutely implemented their own Online Safety Act. We would have seen the complete death of free speech in America. Momentarily, we're going to be joined by my next guest, Anthony Bellotti, the founder of White Coat Waste. But before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of tonight's episode of Loomer Unleashed, Kirk Elliott Precious Metals.
Breaking news. Laura Loomer has been canceled. The President of the United States has refused to take her phone calls as he suspects she is soon to be arrested.
Is Laura Loomer the most hated person on planet Earth? We want to hear from you, the listener, and get your opinion on whether or not...
Man, I tell you, I heard she got canceled. We coming for you, bitch. We coming to your house, Laura Loomer. We fight. We know where you live. We coming for you right now. We coming for your friends. We coming for your friend's little dog.
Frankly, I hope they throw her away for the rest of her life. I hope she dies.
She is currently on the run from authorities. She is described as armed and dangerous.
I just can't believe she's been getting away with it for this. An angry mob appears to be forming outside the home of journalist Laura Loomer.
What is wrong with you? Why are you not panicking?
Because I called Kirk Elliott Precious Metals, and I learned how adding gold and silver to my portfolio is one of the safest ways to not just grow my finances, but to also protect them from the uncertainty of the future. So I'm fine.
Call economist Kirk Elliott at 720-605-3900 or schedule a call online at kepm.com/Loomer to learn how you can safely grow your retirement portfolio with precious metals.
Head on over to kepm.com/Loomer. That's kepm.com/Loomer, you guys. Kirk Elliott Precious Metals, a great place to get your precious metals, to get your gold and silver. Now is a great time to invest in gold and silver. Record high for gold in our country. We've had Kirk Elliott on the program several times in the last few months to talk about how with the implementation of the Trump tariffs, the price of gold has risen. So if you invested several months ago before the inauguration of President Trump, when Dr. Kirk Elliott first came on and you invested in precious metals with Kirk Elliott, well, you have made a pretty penny on your investment. And so definitely call them. They have a great team, very friendly people, very knowledgeable people, very kind people, ideologically aligned with us over here at Loomer Unleashed. Conservatives, pro-America, pro-Trump, pro-free speech. That's why they sponsor people like me and they sponsor people like Alex Jones, because they truly do believe in free speech. And Dr. Kirk Elliott is a big fighter against cancel culture, and he believes in the values that we value here at Loomer Unleashed. So if you want to purchase, invest in precious metals, gold and silver from a company that is ideologically aligned with you and is fighting for the same things that you're fighting for, faith, freedom, family, free speech, America First values, definitely call Dr. Kirk at 720-605-3900, 720-605-3900, or visit kepm.com/Loomer, kepm.com/Loomer. They've created this special landing page for Loomer Unleashed viewers. They treat our viewers very well. People are very happy when they call Kirk Elliott. And every single day, if you check the news, there's just tons of reports every day about how there isn't a better time than now to be investing in gold and silver, and just how much gold has skyrocketed in the last few months since President Trump has been president, right, in the second administration. So it's definitely great. We saw this week that Governor Ron DeSantis here in the state of Florida signed legislation making gold and silver legal tender here in the state of Florida. That now makes it 12 states, I believe, 12 states in our country out of 50 states that allow you to use gold and silver as legal tender. And so a lot of people didn't know that. A lot of people were not aware of that until we made them aware of that last episode. On the last episode on Tuesday evening, I believe, is when Ron DeSantis signed that legislation into law here in the state of Florida. So if you live in Florida or you live in one of the other 11 states where gold and silver is legal tender, it's another great reason to invest in precious metals. And you can easily find the list online of those 12 states in our nation that allow you to use gold and silver as legal tender. So check them out, kepm.com/Loomer, kepm.com/Loomer, 720-605-3900. Let them know that Laura Loomer sent you. They love hearing from the Loomer Unleashed viewers. And of course, if you've contacted Kirk Elliott, please let me know in the comments. I always love hearing from my viewers about your experience with the sponsors. I only support companies and allow for companies to sponsor the program if it's a good product, a trusted product, and really if they support the mission and the values that the show is promoting. And so definitely stand by Kirk Elliott Precious Metals. Have had nothing but great reviews from all of you, and just a great experience working with them as well. It's just been such a pleasure working with Kirk Elliott Precious Metals, and they don't try to dictate my content. You know, a lot of sponsors, sometimes you'll get complaints, right? If you say something or you do something and maybe your sponsor doesn't agree with it, but it's just been such a positive experience, and I can't thank them enough, because if it weren't for our sponsors, we wouldn't really be able to be on the air, because we are an independent publication, and I don't have a multi-million-dollar budget. I don't have a multi-billion-dollar budget. I don't work for one of the mainstream networks, and so it's through your support with your subscriptions and also the support of Kirk Elliott Precious Metals, our main sponsor here on Loomer Unleashed, that I'm able to deliver this show and this program to you and speak truth to millions of people every single week online. It's because of their generous sponsorship of the show. So definitely consider supporting Kirk Elliott Precious Metals and purchasing your precious metals from them if you decide to invest in gold and silver. Alrighty. It's been such an amazing week. You know, those of you who watch my show, you know that I'm a big time animal lover. I love dogs. I have 4 dogs of my own. I love animals. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about is animal testing. I really do not like animal testing. And earlier in the year, a friend of mine connected me with this really amazing group that I had never heard of before called White Coat Waste. And I had heard of things that they had done, right? Like exposing Fauci and all the experiments with the beagles and the labs. But I really wasn't too familiar with White Coat Waste as a whole. And over the last few months, I have really become quite friendly, right? I consider them my friends. I've collaborated with them and had them on the show several times. And it's pretty amazing what can happen, right? When you cross paths with people, and you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what's going to happen when you meet a new person. And I think it's just so beautiful. One of my favorite things about having access to such a large platform and being free to say what I want to say and not working for a corporate entity and not working for the mainstream media is I'm allowed to report on whatever I want to report on. I'm allowed to decide anytime I want to go live what I want to do. And one of the things that I really have been focused on covering here at Loomer Unleashed over the last few months is the federal funding of animal abuse with your taxpayer dollars. And $20 billion a year of U.S. tax dollars go towards funding abusive torture experiments on cats and dogs in taxpayer-funded laboratories, both here in the United States of America and also abroad in places like China. And it's happening not just at NIH headquarters, but it's also happening at laboratories all across the country. And many of these laboratories, as we have exposed with our friends over at White Coat Waste, are located at a lot of these universities that President Trump is speaking out against. So I want to thank President Trump, because while he's cracking down federally on the funding of a lot of these universities engaged in anti-American, anti-Semitic activities, he's also cracking down on a lot of the funding of the animal abuse experiments that are happening in many of these facilities. And so joining me now to discuss a lot of the breaking achievements that have happened this week as a result of White Coat Waste investigations. Very exciting week. We have so much content to go through tonight, because it's just been win after win after win as it relates to getting bans on animal testing, getting animal welfare legislation passed this week. Joining me now to discuss all of this is the founder and CEO of White Coat Waste, Anthony Bellotti. Anthony, thanks so much for joining me tonight. It's great to have you. And who's your furry friend? Who's that cutie?
Well, hey, Laura, it's great to be here. Thank you for having us. And this here is Delilah. This is Delilah. And she is a survivor of one of those federal animal labs that you just aptly described. It's the $20 billion torture chambers, $20 billion a year of tax money that our government is forcing taxpayers to pay, whether we like it or not. Delilah is formerly government ID number 87. You can see it in her ear. on the in both of her ears, bilateral tattoos, number 87. And she didn't come from just any cat laboratory. She's a survivor of what was the largest cat lab in the entire federal government. And in President Trump's last administration, White Coat Waste ran the campaign that exposed it and closed it. And my best friend is alive and here with us today. Thanks a lot to President Trump's leadership. And we're extending those victories now in the second administration. Bigger, better, more. And losing track of time, with 48 hours ago, it's been another massive victory for pets in laboratories, cats and dogs, at the Department of the Navy. We just earned and secured a policy to ban testing on cats and dogs in taxpayer-funded labs via the U.S. Navy.
And this
is
was
a big
announced
win.
while I was live on air. So I was, live on air on Tuesday evening when this announcement came out, and my phone kept ringing, and it was the secretary. Well, it was the press secretary and the chief of staff for the Secretary of the Navy under the Trump administration. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't have the number saved in my phone. I was like, oh my God, who's calling me? I'm live on air right now. And so people would have seen me saying, oh, people are calling me live on air. Why are people calling me? I'm live on air. And it was because they were calling to say that the exclusive reporting here on Loomer Unleashed of the White Coat Waste investigations, when I had your colleague Justin Goodman on to talk about your guys' exclusive investigative report, which we, were the first to put in written form, right, in an article to publish your incredible findings at White Coat Waste. It ended up going viral, as many of you saw. That was a story that we broke here on Loomer Unleashed with White Coat Waste, and Elon Musk ended up seeing it, and he said that he was going to investigate. And less than a month later, really, I think it was about 3 weeks later, the Secretary of the Navy, late on Tuesday evening, released a video saying that the videos and the documents that we exposed were absolutely horrific. We're referring to those electroshock experiments. We played the videos here on Loomer Unleashed that you guys uncovered, and we showed the FOIA documents that you guys uncovered that showed that millions of dollars, we thought it was 10.8 million, but turns out that the number was actually $15 million, according to the Secretary of the Navy. They were shoving marbles and condoms up the butts of cats and electrocuting them and crippling them to do these horrific, abusive experiments on erectile dysfunction and constipation. It sounds crazy. We actually have the video. We played it on Loomer Unleashed several weeks ago for those of you who are longtime viewers, and maybe we'll play it again tonight. But it's so amazing because, I would say that White Coat Waste is probably the most effective. No, I wouldn't even say probably, is the most effective animal advocacy organization out there right now when it comes to shutting down taxpayer-funded animal abuse. And in addition to having the Navy Secretary speak out about ending this $15 million contract, Pete Hegseth also issued a statement from the official rapid response account 2 weeks ago saying that they were shutting down testing on beagles, and then we were awaiting another official statement as it pertained to a DoD contract where 300 beagles per week, which were provided by the United States government with funding from the United States government, were being tortured in a laboratory paid for by U.S. tax dollars in China. And we were waiting patiently for them to release a statement on that ending. And I believe today, right, there was a report in the New York Post officially releasing a statement from the Department of Defense saying that they were going to be ending those torture experiments, which equates to 27,000 beagles per year.
It's been an unbelievable few weeks, Laura, and thank you again for everything to help us really just turbocharge these campaigns. And we would not have been able to win, not at this pace, not without you. And so thank you for really everything here. I mean, this is big stuff. This is real lives we're talking about. You can see, I mean, I didn't just rescue this cat. It's who came out of a lab. We exposed it and closed it, and then I living with my my new pet here, who was a lab animal, and this is big stuff, and this is a big deal. And as you just pointed out, we didn't just get Pete Hegseth to do the right thing and cut that contract. And thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Very important a move he made, because it didn't only cut the contract for the electroshock torture and constipation torture and ED torture, marbles and condoms. He didn't only cut that. He set, with that one strategic move, he set in a chain reaction, a $10 million contract that well, now we know it's more than that, but what we thought was a $10 million contract, he shredded it, set off a ripple wave. 10 days later, the Secretary of the Navy then says, I'm going even further. All of it, all the dogs and cats now, I'm wiped out. Wiped out. We're wiping out the policy. We're wiping that out.
We have that video, actually. I want to go ahead and play the video from the Secretary of the Navy. He posted this video on Tuesday evening announcing the end of the contract. And we're in talks with the Secretary of the Navy and the Department of Defense, too, for a meet and greet with White Coat Waste. And so stay tuned for that, because following these reports that came out, and they were absolutely horrified, the Secretary of the Navy released this statement that we're about to play for all of you. And they now also want to get more involved with White Coat Waste in identifying other examples of waste, fraud, and abuse. And so, there's other animal groups out there, we won't say their name, but they know who they are, that love to try to take credit for the work of other organizations. And they try to get away with it because they have very large budgets, and they think that having access to all that money in the PR machine, PETA, is going to somehow make them more effective. But ultimately, it'd be really great if we can get to a point in time where people could put their ideological differences aside and their hatred for Trump aside, and understand that animals are creatures that bring us all together despite our political differences and our ideological differences. And this is something that people from all backgrounds, all religious backgrounds, all ethnicities, all political parties should be crossing the aisle to come together on, to say we're not going to tolerate $20 billion of our taxpayer money every single year going towards these torture chambers here in the United States of America to torture innocent cats and dogs and monkeys and mice and rats and all types of animals, but mostly primates and cats and dogs. Over 40,000 beagles per year die in laboratories in the United States of America. According to John Raymer, who came on a couple weeks ago, he of course is the founder of Kindness Ranch, and he goes around, and just got a text message from him the other day telling me that they picked up another 30 beagles this week, right? They picked up another 30 beagles from laboratories that are surrendering these beagles. They would otherwise have been executed and euthanized, and they will now be going to the Kindness Ranch in Wyoming. And so it's a beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful thing. President Trump is helping to ensure that that funding for these animal abuse experiments are not allowed any longer. And there's a lot of work to be done, of course. A lot of these contracts still haven't been cut, but every single time we have brought them to the attention of the Trump administration, it may take a couple of weeks, but they've been very receptive in trying to end these contracts. So I want to go ahead and play the clip. This is the Navy Secretary on Tuesday evening announcing the end of their testing on dogs and cats.
Today, it gives me great pleasure to terminate all Department of the Navy's testing on cats and dogs, saving taxpayer dollars and ending these inhumane studies. This is long overdue. In addition to this termination, I'm directing the Surgeon General of the Navy to conduct a comprehensive review of all medical research programs to ensure they align with ethical guidelines, scientific necessity, and our core values of integrity and readiness.
That must make you feel really good, because how many years have you been doing this? How many years have you been involved in animal advocacy and trying to end animal testing?
Yeah, I would say about, it's a funny question you asked that. White Coat's going on, it's almost 9 full years. But I have a funny story because next month is the 30th anniversary of how I got into all this. See, I worked in an animal testing lab when I was 17 years old, so I just dated myself.
Wow.
But when I was in high school, I wanted to get, I thought I was going to be a doctor, or at least I wanted to be. And I wanted to get a letter of recommendation for a pre-medical track in college, one of those accelerated programs. So long story short, I did a stint as just a couple weeks, nothing much, but at an internship in an animal testing lab in New York. And, I was not a vegetarian. I wasn't an animal rights activist. I was a 17-year-old kid from Jersey. But I was horrified by what I saw, and I will never forget that till to this day, it became my life's mission, and it became my life's work to fight back against gratuitous cruelty in these torture chambers. And I didn't know how to do it when I was 17 years old, but I know how to do it now. And over the last 9 years, what we've done, Laura, and what you just saw in that video is proof of it. What we're doing is ending the culture of losing. The culture of losing in the animal rights, the legacy animal rights movement, because it wasn't very good at shutting down labs. It's been around, those legacy groups have been around for so many decades, scores, right? 50 years, 40, 50 years. And what do we get for it, right? Vivisection, fancy word for animal experimentation on animals, went up, 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 up. Right? Up on their watch. And taxpayer-funded share of the vivisection pie, or the animal testing pie, went up, 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 up. A grand total of 0 federal primate labs were shut down over the last 10 years outside of white coat waste. A grand total of 0 federal dog labs were shut down over the last close to 20 years, and a grand total of 0 federal cat labs, right here, were shut down in 40 years. Again, outside of what we're doing here. That's the legacy approach. It don't work. Throwing red paint doesn't work. You have to, if you want to save animals, you cut funding that hurts them. It's that simple. Stop the money, stop the madness. That was the innovation we came up with. This is a taxpayer-funded problem. If we can drain the swamp, we can drain the problem. And that's what we did.
And President Trump was the first president to sign an executive order, if you recall, during the first Trump administration that made animal cruelty a felony. And so that was not done until President Trump. And it's interesting how a lot of times people think that, it's the Democrats that care about animals and they care about the environment. Well, President Trump, as far as I'm concerned, has done more to support animal welfare and animal rights and to fight against animal testing and animal abuse than any president in United States history that I can think of. And so I think that he should definitely be commended for doing so. And it gets even better. Not only did the Secretary of the Navy announce that they were banning all testing on dogs and cats going forward, but let's go ahead and show this New York Post article that just came out today, and then you can speak to this as well, because this was another one of your investigations. We also have the Floridian article too. There was a lot of press on the Navy Secretary. This was one article that came out. Let's go ahead and get this up on the screen. NIH won't renew cruel drug experiments on beagle puppies, some as young as 8 months old. Scroll down. This just came out today. This is actually, I had actually released this about 2 weeks ago on Twitter when we first became aware of it, but for some reason it took 2 weeks for an official statement. Let's go ahead and get that pulled back up. It took about 2 weeks for an official statement to be released, but I'm glad that it's now in a mainstream publication. It says China-led drug tests on hundreds of beagle puppies won't be conducted. And the number's a bit inaccurate there, I'd say, because it's hundreds every week, right? It's 300 per week, which equates to 27,000. So the New York Post should actually correct their article to say 300 per week. Let's get it back on the screen here. 300 per week. It's actually 27,000. Won't be conducted anymore on the U.S. taxpayers' dime. The National Institutes of Health confirmed to the Post on Thursday, but the Defense Department still hasn't copped to partially funding the research deemed cruel by lawmakers and a watchdog group. A $124,200 contract between the NIH and the Beijing-based biotech firm Pharmaron to test pharmaceuticals on the pooches from September 1st, 2023 to May 31st, 2025 is not being renewed, according to a spokesperson with the Public Health Agency's Office of Extramural Research. You can scroll down. Scroll up a little bit. It's actually a lot more money than that. The taxpayer watchdog White Coat Waste Project unearthed the contract via a Freedom of Information request with documents showing up to 300 beagles, supposed to be per week, 300 beagles per week, as well as rats and mice. Again, we did the math on this and we talked about this a couple weeks ago on Loomer Unleashed. That's 27,000 beagles, okay? 27,000 beagles per year, you guys, that are now going to be saved. We're being tested per week to help understand and treat neurological disorders. Yeah, well, they say it in a very, kind of like medical researchy way, but, and they try to make it sound like they were just being researched on. It's a lot more brutal than that. A lot more brutal. And the reason why they needed 300 per week is because of the mortality rate of a lot of the beagles, because, why would you need to have 300 beagles per week unless you were killing a lot of them, right? I mean, that's a lot of dogs. That's 27,000, and they do not treat animals well in China. And I know we opened up the show tonight by talking about how President Trump is cracking down on the student visas of Chinese nationals. Look, I think we need to have a serious conversation about what happens when we import people into our country or we work with people who don't share our values. And I have 4 dogs, 3 of them are rescues, and one of my dogs, Mecca, my Yorkie Poo, was rescued from China. She came from a Chinese meat market. And so that's what they do to dogs there. They torture them in laboratories, just like what's happening here in the United States, but they also eat them. They kill them. During COVID, they were under the belief in China that COVID, if you had COVID, your dogs and your cats also had COVID. And so they were going around and they were kidnapping people's pets in nets and bashing their heads on the sidewalk in videos that were going viral. I mean, they really honestly have a terrible record as it relates to dogs and cats in China. And I think it should horrify everybody that our Department of Defense was engaged in contracts with the Chinese government to torture animals.
You know, it's funny, Laura, China. Let's talk about China for another minute here. How did we find that contract at all? You know, the NIH DoD contract going to China, right? Well, it comes back to this cat right here. You mentioned the meat markets in China, eating dogs and cats, right? In the most horrific abuse. And you're right. Well, we know something about this because her laboratory back during the first Trump administration in 2019, she came from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's where Delilah was born. Her grandparents, great-grandparents, all the way back to, I think, the 60s. I think she traces her bloodlines all the way back there to the first cat they were using. And Delilah's lab was doing some very, very bad. What they were doing was they were actually going around to China, rounding up dog and cat meat over there and bringing it back to the kittens over here in the Beltway. They were flying it home, tongues, brains, body parts of cats and dogs, again, pets, stolen pets, whatever, family pets, stray animals, meat market, rounding them up, literally flying them back, Chinese scientists in their carry-on luggage on flights, transporting it to her laboratory in Maryland, and then feeding the cat meat to other lab kittens. Delilah was a breeder in that lab. She had 22 kittens who were all slaughtered and incinerated around 10 weeks old. 22 of them, and they were burned to a crisp. But
Why were
the
they
kittens,
burned? Why did they burn the kittens?
that was their policy. They incinerated them after they killed them. They grabbed them by the scruff of the neck, shoved a needle through their
Why
heart.
did they want to kill the kittens?
Because that was the protocol. That's what they were doing. They were doing toxoplasmosis research, and they were harvesting the germs they literally were making the kittens eat rotten meat that was infected with parasites. They went to the litter box, pooped it out. They harvested the germs, and then they killed the kittens. And this went on for almost 50 years. So long story short, back to the China connection, because this is what broke the back of the program when we exposed this, that they were flying to China, getting cat meat and dog meat, and feeding it in cannibalism experiments in the Beltway. That was the first investigation we ever did abroad, and when we went public with that information,
And for those of you who aren't familiar, when he says the Beltway, you're talking about the Washington D.C. area. You're talking about laboratories. For those who are wondering what he means by the Beltway, it's another term for the swamp, right? In case you don't spend time in D.C., because a couple people in the comments are like, "What's the Beltway?" The Beltway is the Washington D.C. Virginia area.
So that's where deep state experimenters and scientists and bureaucrats hang out. That's another word for it, because that's what they're loaded up with in the swamp.
They were flying dead cats and dead dogs from China to the United States to engage in cannibalism experiments in laboratories in the Beltway where they were torturing cats and dogs. And by the way, this is still happening, by the way, just so you all know. Like, White Coat Waste has only gotten some of it shut down. There are still hundreds of labs across our country that are engaged in this type of activity. And so if you think that, oh, well, just because they're shutting down this one, it means that they're all going to get shut down. Absolutely not. There's still a ton of them, including within our own government. And, while the government is now starting to address some of this after our coverage went viral and your investigations, which I aired here on my show, went viral, unfortunately, there are still some people in the Trump administration who are trying to pretend like they are doing good by these animals, but they actually aren't. And we had to speak truth to power. And one of those individuals who went on television kind of begrudgingly and said that they were shutting down one of the Beagle labs at the NIH headquarters a couple of weeks ago is Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who is the current NIH director. And I know that you have some breaking news that you wanted to break here on Loomer Unleashed tonight as it pertains to Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and his extension of some of these animal abuse experiments. And I hate that we have to follow up all the great news with some bad news, but we need to shut it down. We absolutely need to shut it down. So, Anthony, why don't you share with our viewers right now this exclusive story that hasn't been reported anywhere else about what Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, the new NIH director, just did?
Well, Laura, you're right. There's a lot more work to be done. And here's proof is just 2 weeks ago, everybody knows about Fauci's Beagle experiments, were the investigators who broke that to the world. And Fauci had many Beagle experiments, not merely the ones on his own campus, not merely the ones that they were doing in-house. We exposed those two and closed them down. But here's the problem, Laura. As you mentioned, there's a lot of other universities, schools on the dole taking tax money, your money, for experimenting on dogs and cats. And one of them was at the University of Missouri. And this is another Fauci-funded legacy grant that just got renewed. Another payout for taxpayer-funded torture at the University of Missouri, which was a Fauci grant to feed dogs alive to ticks and let them feast and eat and suck the blood of the dogs. So we have a big problem here. It's why are we still funding this stuff? Why are we giving new payouts for dog and cat experiments? What's going on here? This is not what the president wanted. The president was very clear about this. Crackdown and
it's also very disingenuous because we played the clip a few weeks ago where he was asked about it on on Fox News Sunday, and I believe it was Rachel Campos Duffy who interviewed him, and he was talking about how, PETA sent him flowers and congratulated him because, well, they shut down the last Beagle Lab on the NIH headquarter campus in Bethesda, Maryland, and he made it sound like they were committed to ending animal testing, and here he is now renewing funding for animal torture experiments on dogs where they're literally allowing for ticks to eat dogs alive at the University of Missouri. So I think that Dr. Jay Bhattacharya needs to be questioned on this. He definitely needs to be pressed on this because it's rather disingenuous and pretty cruel, in my opinion, to go on Fox News and talk about how amazing you are because, well, you're shutting down a Beagle Lab at the NIH headquarters, only to deceptively then 2 weeks later, not even almost 11 days later, right? Because that came out on the 3rd of May, I believe. I believe that came out on the 3rd of May. And now you're saying that on the 14th of May, they allocated this funding for these animal torture experiments at University of Missouri. So not even 2 weeks later, he's repeating the behavior that is known to Fauci and a lot of these Biden era NIH officials. And unfortunately, a lot of these same people who worked with Fauci are now being promoted to positions of power in NIH under the current NIH director. So just like we've had to clear house at the NSC and the NSA and a lot of these other agencies, and, we talk about this extensively here on Loomer Unleashed, this concept of the vetting crisis in the Trump administration. The current administration officials and cabinet members who have been appointed also need to be held accountable. And especially if they're going to go on live television and like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, and say that, they're committed to ending animal testing or reducing animal testing. Well, he clearly lied when he issued that recent press release that they published on the NIH website saying that they were going to phase out some of their animal testing or be committed to ending more animal testing. That doesn't really seem like a commitment to ending animal testing to me when you're allocating funding for these horrific experiments. And that's what Dr. Fauci got in trouble for. But it was flies instead of ticks, right? Allowing for beagles to have their heads eaten alive by flies. I think it was fruit flies, some kind of a fruit fly. And now Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is essentially repeating Dr. Fauci's cruel experiment, but with ticks instead of flies.
This is a major, major concern. And you're right. You talk about the vetting crisis in the administration. And the vetting crisis, this needs to be looked into. This needs to be probed because why are we funding this? Why are we not defunding this? What is going on at the NIH about this? This was not that the president. This is clearly out of step with what the president wanted. He was very clear.
Doesn't support this. President Trump doesn't support this, and I know that his administration officials, upon hearing this, they do not support this. Pete Hegseth was horrified when he found out about these experiments that were happening with the DOD. The Navy Secretary was horrified. I know so. I spoke with his staff. They personally told me that he was horrified. And so it just makes me wonder why Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who is aware of what's happening and claiming to shut it down, is then quietly approving this. Like, is he not horrified by animal abuse and torture? I understand, too, that he has said that he's a fan of white coat waste. Well, how can you say that you're a fan of white coat waste when you are giving funding to the same mad scientists who are being exposed by white coat waste? It's just very disingenuous and it's very fake. And I'm very disappointed in Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. We gave him praise a couple weeks ago here on Loomer Unleashed when he did the right thing. We will always give people credit when credit is due, but we also have to call people out when they go astray or they do something that is incompatible with the America First agenda. And we have to call everybody out if they're engaged in animal abuse or the facilitation of animal abuse. And I think we can all agree that allowing ticks to eat animals alive when they can't leave a cage and they're subjected to feel pain and they're not being given pain medicine and they're not allowed to go outside, that's animal abuse. And Dr. Jay Bhattacharya needs to be held accountable for that if he's going to allow for this to happen on his watch.
Absolutely. It's credit where credit is due for sure, always. But this is our job, is to expose and close these labs that are conducting heinous and wasteful spending on animals. NIH has a problem with priorities right now. You mentioned that big announcement with the press release and their new policy is a REVA policy. We oppose it. And we opposed it when they put it out for a reason. It was a bit of a disappointment. You have an AREVA, they call it AREVA, it's an abbreviation. But what it means is the NIH put out no commitment to actually phasing out animal testing, no timetable, and no spending cuts in that official policy. What they said was that they're going to prioritize things like alternatives. It sounds good, but unless there's a commitment with a timetable, a deadline, and a hard spending cut, without that deadline to phase it out and get rid of it, the problem is it gives this unlimited pass to just maintain the status quo. And the status quo is unacceptable. That's what's going on. We've got Fauci, Biden leftovers and holdovers who are ramming these payouts through. I'm not sure, but this is a major problem of priorities right now. Why is Fauci getting funded? Why are Fauci grants getting refunded now? They should be getting defunded.
Absolutely. Are there any other cuts to animal testing that you want to highlight? I know that it's been a pretty big month, let alone a big week for white coat waste. But I know that we spoke about the announcement today. Well, the confirmation of the announcement we made 2 weeks ago by the New York Post as it relates to the ending of the contract with the DoD in China, where 27,000 beagles per year were going to be supplied by the United States of America for torture experiments. We talked about the Navy Secretary cutting all animal testing as it relates to dogs and cats. What else?
Well, we also have, there's a lot of other junk that needs to go, right? There's a lot of other, in the NIH headquarters right now, there is a heinous monkey experiment, Laura, that you helped us expose recently, that they're still doing in their own basement, right there in the NIH headquarters. This was an experiment
Dr.
that
Jay Bhattacharya works every day, by the way. So this is what I'm talking about being disingenuous. Don't go on Fox News and pretend like you're a savior for animals and that you're doing the right thing when they're doing this in Bethesda, Maryland. Like these buildings that you see, right? We're not just talking about laboratories in China and faraway lands. We're talking about laboratories in federal buildings in our nation's capital and just outside of our nation's capital, where animals are literally being tortured in the basement. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, some kind of horror movie, where you have these mad scientists literally caging innocent dogs and cats and monkeys in cages in the basements of these federal buildings, and they're torturing them with a $20 billion budget per year.
And back in, right after we shut Delilah's lab down back in 2019, White Coat Waste sued the NIH, and we sued them to pry secret videotapes out of their hands of filming. They were actually filming these monkey experiments in the basement, in which they were damaging their brains with acid. They were chaining them up by the neck, locking them up in these cages, and then deliberately frightening them with snakes and spiders, just to provoke a fear response, right? So think about that. They're caging them, they're brain damaging them, and then they're just trying to induce as much fear as possible. This is still happening. This is still going on inside his headquarters. Why? Again, we first exposed those secret videos to the world back in, we first sued in 2019, got the tapes, and exposed them to the world in early 2020. And we started the campaign, and we're not stopping until that's cleaned out too. But that is still going on right now, and it shows you we have a major problem with priorities right now. They're building more bureaucracy. They're building bigger government. They're opening up new departments. This new AREVA plan I told you about, it looks like a Joe Biden plan. That's what it looks like. It looks like a Kamala plan. That's what they're building in there right now. We've got a big problem of priorities. Why are we funding Fauci grants to feed dogs to ticks and insects? Why are we torturing monkeys with snakes and spiders in the basement of the NIH? This stuff's got to go. That's priority number one. Clean house.
Yeah, and they're still funding some of these kitten labs too. You talked about the kitten lab that you guys got shut down where your precious Delilah, and you have multiple cats, right? This is just one of the cats. Don't you have another cat that you rescued from a laboratory as well?
Absolutely. Well, I actually adopted two cats from the USDA in 2019. After Trump shut that down, we ran that campaign. He shut it down, and I adopted two of the breeding moms. One of them passed away last year. Her name was Petite, and she was a tiny little cat, and they named her Petite. And she passed away. And then I adopted another one from another lab we had gotten shut down. Her name is Marigold, and she actually was from the University of California, Davis. Was another Fauci-funded experiment in which they were trying to replicate the same style of kitten cannibalism experiments, but doing it out there. And Dr. Fauci was funding it. We knocked that thing out, killed that thing last year. And Marigold was one of the cats in the colony where they were breeding cats and doing experiments on them. So this is saving cats is from wasteful spending is my specialty.
And so Marigold is still alive, right? She's just not
Yes.
on air tonight. And so if you don't, I know it's a sore subject and I hate to bring it up because our animals are like children. Did Petite die from natural causes, or was her death accelerated because of the mistreatment she had in the laboratories?
Probably natural causes, but who knows, right? I mean, it was. She had her kidneys went out at the end, and she had been sick for a while. But it's pets are family, and these two cats were my, Delilah and Petite were my family, and they're going down in the history books too. It's last thing I'll say about China is, a lot of people don't know this, but White Coat Waste isn't just the organization that exposed Fauci's Beagle tests. We're also the organization that first exposed and first uncovered that U.S. taxpayers funded the Wuhan lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the lab leak center. We exposed that.
Responsible for the China virus, which killed 1.2 million Americans and millions of other people around the world too.
And that taxpayers funded it, that the U.S. government did it, that we did our own pandemic, and the reason we did that was because of these cats. We were hot on the trail of looking at what American animal testing labs were paying for in China because of the kitten cannibalism experiments. That happened in 2019, right? We took out the USDA. And right after we ended that laboratory, and we did it with the silver bullet, which was the knockout punch, was the kitten cannibalism investigation. So the first thing we did after that was we said, well, what else is our government funding in China? That was the first question we asked. What else? What other animal abuse are we funding over there? So we started looking around, and we were going through what you call a PHS assurance list, which is the list of all the laboratories that the NIH had authorization for in China. And in late 2019, we came across that there were about 28, 29, 30, give or take, laboratories who were authorized for money in China. Nobody was talking about the lab leak at that time. People didn't start getting sick into what, at least we didn't hear, people got sick early, but the news reports didn't start coming out until early 2020. It was like an epidemic before it was a pandemic. And we had the goods, right? We followed the money right to Wuhan, and we saw there were two universities, Wuhan Institute of Virology and Wuhan University, authorized by the NIH, two of them alone in China. And we brought this to the Trump administration's attention. We met with them in very early 2020. And like I said, it was only an epidemic at that moment. It wasn't a pandemic yet. But we were meeting with them just to talk about the broader agenda of wasteful spending on animal testing. And a month or two after that, or around April of 2020, we took our investigation to the Daily Mail, and that was where the headline came from. U.S. government grants $3.7 million to the lab leak center I'm paraphrasing here, at the center of the coronavirus scandal. That's how the world learned who paid for the pandemic. And my cats are the ones who put us on that trail because they were part of that kitten cannibalism investigation, because they turned us on to the scandal that our government was funding these labs in China. That's how this happened. And that's how taxpayers learned about it and the world learned about it. So Petite's no longer with us, but she's going down in history.
Absolutely. And White Coat Waste is going down in history for all of the incredible work that you've done, not just to expose the China virus, but also to expose all of these cruel animal abuse experiments, and think about all the lives that you've saved. I mean, just in the announcement today that was confirmed, I mean, we released this together 2 weeks ago, and now the media confirmed it today with the official statement that we were waiting on from the Department of Defense. That's 27,000 beagles just in one lab per year that you have saved from this one contract that won't be renewed because of your investigation. Who knows how many dogs and cats you just saved this week, too, as a result of the Secretary of the Navy banning all testing on dogs and cats going forward. Who knows how many cats and dogs you're saving from these electroshock experiments that are also being cut from the DoD. I mean, there are thousands of animals that are now going to be able to go to loving homes and avoid execution and avoid euthanasia. And hopefully through your work with groups like Kindness Ranch, which goes across the country and picks up these innocent beagles from all these different laboratories, you're going to be able to help these innocent animals find loving homes instead of being tortured for the rest of their lives in these horrific torture chambers paid for by our taxpayer dollars. So I hope you're very proud of yourself and the work that you're doing, especially as a group that has, such a small budget compared to groups like PETA that have $75 million per year. And it's like, personally, I think that you guys should be getting, they should be giving you guys the money that they're taking away from these animal testing experiments should go to groups like you that are actually exposing.
We'll actually get the lab shut down.
So hopefully you're able to get millions of dollars in contributions so that you can continue expanding, because you have a pretty small team, right? I mean, if you don't mind sharing with the viewers tonight, how many people work for White Coat Waste?
I think we're at, thank you for the very kind words, Lauren. Team effort. These historic wins over the last month, we wouldn't have been able to do it without you. So congrats to team effort here. Thank you. And we are a small team, but we're lean and mean, and we're Operation Kill. We shut the labs down. Our full-time staff is, I think it's about a dozen, give or take. So it's not that big. I founded the organization in 2011. But it wasn't a full-time organization until 2016. I founded it out of my own pocket. I started it from nothing. But we have a grassroots movement here. We have a great message here. We have a president in the Oval Office here who supports this moral imperative and this fiscal imperative, and this just that pets are family, and we've got to end this sad, horrible chapter of taxpayer-funded torture and get our government out of this dirty business. So we're rocking and we're growing. And Laura, thank you for helping us each step of the way.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of work to still be done. Hopefully we can get you in the Oval Office. I think it'd be so great to see President Trump do a photo shoot with the beagles and the cats. And I think it's great when you guys take all the dogs and the cats to Capitol Hill to meet with lawmakers, because you're doing such important work. And I hope that more people will support the work that you're doing as well. Where do people go if they want to support you, if they want to donate to White Coat Waste? I know you guys have a great website. You're also on social media. We'll flag your website and your social media accounts for people watching right now. But if people watching want to donate, where do they go to donate right now?
Thank you, Laura. And if we encourage folks to go to whitecoatwaste.org, whitecoatwaste.org. Check us out on X at the handle White Coat Waste, Facebook White Coat Waste, Instagram White Coat Waste. Pretty easy. White Coat Waste, a funny name, but that's White Coat Waste. That's all you need.
And you're a 501c3, right? So all the contributions are tax deductible?
Tax deductible. Mm-hmm.
Great. So if you haven't already made your charitable contributions this year, make sure you head on over to whitecoatwaste.org and make a contribution to White Coat Waste. They're doing incredible work. They're not just talking about saving animals. They actually have the receipts to prove it. That video from the Secretary of the Navy and also these reports that just came out today in the New York Post. And I mean, you guys got a lot of press, Gateway Pundit, Breitbart. It's all over the place, really all over the news, what has happened as a result of your work and your just hard fought investigation. So we can't thank you enough. And as one animal lover to another, I'm just very touched by the fact that you put your own resources and your own, your own money into building such an impactful organization that is now saving thousands of lives. And I just hope that all of these animals are going to be able to find loving homes and that they're going to be able to meet people like you rescued Delilah and Petite and Marigold, and that they're going to be able to help these animals escape some of the trauma that has been the last several years of their life living in these laboratories, because it's a lot of work. I remember when I got Mecca from the Chinese meat market, she was very timid. She was very scared and she didn't really want to be around anybody and she would hide under the bed. And now, right, she's like the happiest little dog. So it can happen. You can really brighten an animal's life and give them another chance at life. And that's what you guys are doing every day. So I'm a proud supporter of White Coat Waste and anything I can do to help you guys. I'm blessed with a large platform. I worked for my platform. I worked hard to build it up from nothing. But what's the point of having a large following if you're not going to use your following to help others, right? You don't get to keep your Twitter account when you die someday. You don't get to take your social media followers with you. And so the best part about having a lot of followers on social media is that every single week I'm able to bring people like you on my show and inform other people about all these amazing causes that they can get involved in, things that the mainstream media isn't talking about that they should be talking about. So I just want to thank you for everything that you do for the animals and congratulations. What an amazing week it's been for you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for everything. And let's go close more labs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciate it.
Thank you again. Take care.
Thank you. Alrighty. Anthony is also on social media as well at Anthony Bellotti, so be sure that you follow him too. I follow him, and I've posted several of his tweets today, so you can check it out and see it for yourself. Joining me now to continue, she's getting framed up right now. We're going to continue our discussion about animal cruelty and people, heroes, friends of mine, heroic Republican lawmakers. Really, it's interesting, isn't it? How I was talking to Anthony about this, how traditionally speaking, it's the Democrats who have always been, the ones to get the credit for saving the animals and saving the environment and cracking down on animal abuse and being animal rights activists, when really now it's the Trump administration and Republican lawmakers that are just totally slaying it and crushing it every single week as it relates to cracking down on animal abusers. And so this is something that you're not going to see the media really give Republicans a lot of credit for, but just this week alone, President Trump, Governor Ron DeSantis, my next guest who's going to be joining us momentarily, Meg Weinberger, Jimmy Patronis. I mean, there's so many Republicans that have just done absolutely incredible work this week as it relates to fighting for the lives of innocent animals, the most vulnerable members of our society. And my next guest is a personal friend of mine, somebody I greatly admire and love dearly. She is a freshman Florida legislature, Florida representative in Tallahassee. My friend, Meg Weinberger, Florida representative. Meg, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. One of the reasons why you decided to run for office, and I know I helped you with your campaign, and you told me one of the reasons why you wanted so badly to be a Florida representative was to fight for animals. And you yourself have your own animal rescue called Rescue Life, and I've been to your home, I've been to your animal rescue. You literally have 17 dogs that live inside your house. I mean, no joke. This woman literally has 17 dogs. And I'm not just talking little dogs either. I'm talking massive dogs. Okay. We're talking Great Danes, pit bulls, all types of dogs. So she's got a zoo like an actual zoo. She has zebras, she has ducks, she has cats, like she has an entire cat compound in her farm. She's got horses, cows. I mean, there's animals, I don't even know what they are, right? I just know that they're being taken care of very well. And when you decided to run for office, one of the things that you told me that you wanted to do was fight for animals and create laws to go after animal abusers and really make this a national issue, right? Animal welfare. And you've done an incredible job. The Florida legislative session just came to an end, and a lot of lawmakers never get to see the governor of their state sign their laws into effect. But Governor Ron DeSantis actually signed several of your laws into law. And yesterday he signed one of them. It's called Dexter's Law. And I wanted to bring you on to talk about Dexter's Law tonight, because this was a piece of legislation that you created. You campaigned on creating this even before you were a lawmaker. And it's the creation of an animal abuse database, kind of like a child predator, sex predator, pedophile database, right? Like, these databases that you see where child sex predators have to register, and then you're able to see how many child sex predators live in your neighborhood. You actually got the governor to create an animal abuser database. So now there's going to be a state registry, the first of its kind in the state of Florida, the first in the nation, to document animal abusers.
Well, I can't take all the credit, honestly. Rep. Linda Cheney is the one who filed Dexter's Law. I had filed the database. And of course, my passion for animal cruelty and being a voice for the voiceless is something I will always be. I truly believe if you're hurting animals, that's not the only law that you're breaking. If you're hurting children, you're breaking many other laws. And it's just one way to, maybe catch a bad guy before they do something, or girl before they do something worse. So this was, Debbie Dorino. It was her. She's a civilian. She actually was behind Ponce's Law. She's an amazing lady. I met her during my campaign. We met. I was trying to help with some other animals that were being badly abused, and we're trying to get them removed from this. It was in Dixie County, believe it or not. And we met online and just, kind of kept talking. And she had. There was a story of a guy that was arrested for having sex with his dog, if I'm allowed to say this or not. And he was arrested, put in jail. And as soon as he got out of jail, he actually posted it on social media in a husky suit, having sex with his dog. So then when he got out of jail.
He actually dressed up in a husky suit?
Yes. His, it was, I think it was 2019. I was trying to look it up. And Christian
what happened
Nichols
to the
was his
dog?
name.
Did the dog get injured?
I have to ask her. I don't remember. I might have suppressed. I need to find out. But I think the dog was removed, obviously. But he went to jail. As soon as he got out, he was posting a husky and a puppy husky that he had, adopted right after he got out of jail. So, it's one of those that this woman, Debbie, is so passionate. And just like I said, just a civilian that and I was not even elected yet. And she, just told me about this bill that she really thought would be a great idea. So honestly, Representative Cheney having Dexter's Law, making it through all the committees, and was kind enough to letting us, and Senator Leak putting it on his bill in the Senate, was able to get the database. So, Dexter's Law was another horrific, a dog that was adopted from a shelter and 1 month later found decapitated. And he was mutilated and decapitated. He was found in the mangroves. The only way they wouldn't even have known it was him. He was that badly mutilated, but he had a microchip, and the shelter said that he was the sweetest dog.
Why did they mutilate him? Like, what was the purpose of adopting this dog if they were just going to mutilate him and decapitate him?
It's just Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't know. Serial killers. Somebody that should probably never be let out of jail, in my opinion. If you're able to do something that heinous, there's a story. And please throw away the key.
Yeah, and we actually have a bill here announcing the passing of these bills. Let's go ahead and play clip number 8.
Both these bills will save lives. Not possibly, not hopefully, they will save lives.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed 2 new laws Wednesday crafted to protect animals from abuse and neglect. The move comes after a dog was found tied to a pole in Tampa during Hurricane Milton last October. Troopers saved the dog just as floodwaters were rising.
The water was rising very quickly, and so it was getting close to his neck, and had he just been left there, he may have ended up drowning.
The incident led to Troopers Law named after the rescued dog. It's now a felony to tie up and abandon a dog during a declared disaster or evacuation. Offenders could receive up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. That law takes effect October 1st.
If you evacuate, make sure you're taking care of your pets. You cannot leave a dog behind if you're in an evacuation zone.
DeSantis says, unfortunately, Florida has been home to many dogs on the receiving end of abuse. He points to a dog named Dexter who was adopted from a shelter and 4 days later was found killed. Dexter's law takes effect this summer on July 1st. It also creates Florida's first animal abuser database and enhances penalties for aggravated cruelty. For Straight Arrow News, I'm Kaylee Carey. For more unbiased, fact-driven stories, download the Straight Arrow News mobile app today.
And, I've been critical of Governor Ron DeSantis in the past. That's no secret, but I got to give credit where credit's due. I think it's really incredible that Governor Ron DeSantis is standing up for innocent animals and fighting against animal abuse. I love that sign that says Florida loves dogs. And I'll never forget that story when the hurricane happened. I think that you and I were texting each other, me and your husband. Oh, my God, can you believe that somebody actually tied their dog up? And it ended up having a happy ending. Of course, I think a Florida state trooper rescued the dog, and then it went to a loving family, and now it's the happiest dog. And so it's really amazing to see terrible tragedies turn into something positive. And while it's so sad that Dexter was mutilated and decapitated, it's great that people like you are in the Florida House now to create legislation to protect animals. And hopefully we'll see more legislation like this in the future. When does Dexter's law go into effect?
I believe it's July. I think it's July 2025. I was reading it. Yeah, it is. January 1st. No, that's the database, but the Dexter's Law, I think, may be July. I wanted to mention that we have to kind of feel like we're back into it, but there's more than just protecting the animals. I think that we need to educate people, and it needs to start in elementary school. Many people really don't know how to care for animals. They don't understand that to me and you, this seems like common sense, but unfortunately to many people, they don't realize, you don't leave your pet when when you move out of your house, you don't leave your pet. I mean, I remember growing up when people would move out, they would just leave their dog. And of course they would end up living in our house, or something crazy like that. But I think, I've gone to rescue, several dogs from Louisiana during a hurricane where, people, they don't know what to do with their dogs, so they just turn them into the shelter. I think someone like you or I can imagine doing that, but I think people need to be educated.
You and I rescued dogs together during a hurricane.
Yeah, I drove to New Orleans like during a hurricane and had to meet on the side of a road on a truck stop, and we were supposed to bring 20 dogs back in a van, and we brought
Milton. You and I rescued dogs together in the hurricane, and when the tornado hit and destroyed the Furry Friends animal shelter, you and I were the first people on the scene when they were evacuating all the dogs, and you actually are the reason why I ended up adopting Bo, who's one of my new dogs, my blind.
That's right.
Blind dog that was one of the dogs that was at the Furry Friends animal shelter that got completely destroyed during the tornado and the Hurricane Milton just a few months ago. And so I can attest to that. And that was my first thought really in the aftermath of a storm is let's go save all these animals. So
yeah,
I know
I guess I'll have a few cats from that day.
Yeah. Definitely. I wanted to take a few more animals too. And we were able to raise a lot of money for them too. In addition to the database, what else is Dexter's Law going to do aside from, creating harsher penalties for people who abuse dogs. You have this database where people are now going to be able to see, how does the database work exactly? Because, with the pedophile databases, you type in, are there sex offenders in my neighborhood, and it shows where they live, it shows what their name is and what they, what their offense was, so that you're aware of the crimes they committed against children. What can we expect to see from this database? It's like publicly available. How do you access it? And what kind of crimes are going to be listed in there? Is it just animal abuse, or if they've also committed other crimes, can we expect to see that too?
Well, it'll be just like as if you were looking up a sex offender. Yes, they'll be managing it the same way. It doesn't ban them from buying or owning a dog or an animal, but a judge can include that in the sentence. It does, however, give the availability to a shelter or a reputable breeder to look it up and see, their name up and see if there's somebody that is on the database, and not to give to them. I mean, this is a start. You have to see where it goes, and if it needs to go further, then we go back and we make it better. So I think we have to keep working at it. The Dexter's Law increases the sentence multiplier, so it will increase the sentence by 1.25% once convicted.
Wow, that's incredible. Are there any other additional forms of legislation that you have in the pipeline? I know that the Florida legislative session just came to an end, but I know you're always thinking of ways that you can improve the lives of animals. Are there any other bills that you have in mind, or bills that are currently being discussed, for the next legislative session?
I would definitely like to continue. I had a breeder bill in that would, best management practices for breeders. There's some great breeders, and I have no problem if somebody wants to go out and, buy a beautiful golden doodle or a purebred, even though you can rescue them, in case people don't know. But there are breeders that are not good breeders, and their animals are living in conditions where they should not be living in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
well,
we'll fight for that one again next session.
Any last comments or thoughts or anything that you want to relay to the viewers? I know that we've seen a lot of instances of animal abuse here in the state of Florida. It's quite alarming. I know that there was an incident not too far from where I live, where you had a fisherman who was recently just indicted. It made news here in the state of Florida for shooting and poisoning multiple dolphins. Anything you can tell us about how that case is being prosecuted on the state level? I know that the DOJ also released a statement about it, but what can you tell us about that? That was a story. We'll get it up on the screen here momentarily, but just saw that story today, and it just seems like whether it's not just dogs and cats and monkeys that are being abused, and laboratories are being abused by animal abusers who shouldn't have dogs, but also marine animals too. I mean, there's a real epidemic of animal abuse in this country, and I think it goes underreported. And every day there's horrific examples of innocent animals being mutilated, shot, tortured, abused. And what can you tell us about
for years,
how they're being prosecuted?
Well, again, this is going back to education, because for years the mindset was they were just property. They weren't a living being. So I think that's something that we really need to start, unfortunately educating people that they are a living being and they're not just property. Any creature. I don't know much about the dolphin case other than probably what you do. It's just horrific. I can't imagine
on the screen
somebody.
For people that want to see the headline, we'll show it on the screen really quick. Fishing captain sentenced for shooting, poisoning dolphins in Gulf of America. There were, just talking about a lot of the dolphin fatalities. Let's scroll down. People can see the rest of the article. A longtime charter and commercial fishing captain is in deep waters after poisoning and shooting dolphins in the Gulf of America, formerly known as the Gulf of Mexico. Zachary Brandon Barfield of Panama City, Florida, was sentenced to 30 days in prison and ordered to pay a $51,000 fine after pleading guilty to 3 counts of poisoning and shooting dolphins in violation of the Marine Mammal Protection Act and Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. I mean, that seems pretty lenient, right? Like 30 days in prison and a $51,000 fine. I mean, I don't know. You think that
How about, I think you never have a fishing license again. You're never allowed a boating license. You take your boat away. I think completely you're stripped of everything. That's just, there's no possible way.
Longer time.
And especially go to jail. Absolutely. I mean, that's horrific.
Is Dexter's law only applying to domesticated animals like dogs and cats, or is it also going to apply to just animals in general in terms of the sentence multiplier?
Right now, it's not wildlife or agriculture. It is only domestic. But
think we can,
like I
see
said,
an
you gotta start
extension?
somewhere. I think that we're going to need to, especially with stories like this. This is just not acceptable, and that people have just no regard for life or the law.
Absolutely. Well, Meg, we want to thank you for everything that you're doing. In addition to fighting against animal abuse, you also made headlines too for your bill to name, what was it, Donald J. Trump Highway. What can you tell us about that? Because I know that you were endorsed by President Trump. You were recently at the Oval Office for a ceremony recognizing some Palm Beach County officers that were murdered in the line of duty. And you also made news for your creation of, what was it, Donald J. Trump Boulevard? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Donald J. Trump Boulevard, of course. I'm so grateful to have such an incredible president in office. Common sense, honestly, that I can actually understand when he's in office and speaking, and just makes sense. Everything that he's doing, and he says when he says he's going to do it, he does it. I'm so grateful. So I feel like we need to honor him and the state where he lives, and it actually is right the street he lives. And in addition, my other street naming is PBSO Motorman Highway, which happens to be on the same street, Southern Boulevard, going west, to honor the 3 officers that were killed. They're all on their bikes and they're hit by a car.
Terrible. Well, thank you for everything that you're doing, fighting for the citizens of Florida, fighting for animals. You do fantastic work, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. Where can people go to support you? Because obviously, you're going to have to eventually raise funds for your re-election campaign. And if people want to support your efforts so that you can continue your work as a lawmaker, where do people go if they want to reach you or support your future campaign?
Well, since we're still in session, there's no fundraising right now or campaigning, but they can follow me at megforflorida.com. And before I leave, I'd love to pay a tribute and honor to Bernard Carrick, who was New York's commissioner and a dear friend and an unbelievable supporter. I think he was a big reason that helped me get elected. Bernie came from New York several times to not only speak at events for me, but sign, wave, and he was a big part. So I just wanted to, hope you don't mind, I wanted to just send my condolences to his family.
We received this tragic news right as I was about to go live. Bernard Carrick passed away. I wasn't even aware that he had an illness. I think I saw him last when I was having dinner with you and Eric just a few months ago. And so he didn't look sick, and it's just terrible. I'm not really aware of what kind of illness he was battling. I don't think a lot of people were aware of it. It came as kind of a shock when I saw that he died. I thought, oh, well, there must have been a terrible accident or something, because I could have sworn I just saw him at an event with you not too long ago, and he looked perfectly fine. So very sad. I know that he was a supporter of mine too when I ran for Congress, and big supporter of President Trump's, and
great patriot,
a real patriot in our country, and definitely want to pay our tributes to him and our respects to his family now that they're grieving tonight following his untimely passing. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. I appreciate you. Thank you for using your platform.
Of course.
The animals appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, and we look forward to having you on
Keep
the program
fighting
in the future. Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Love you, girlfriend.
Thank you. Bye. Well, a lot of news tonight. A lot of news. Yeah, very sad with the passing of Bernard Carrick. Tributes are pouring in across social media tonight too. Pretty much everybody all over Twitter right now is posting about it. So Very, very sad. You never know when it's going to be your last day. That's why you got to do everything that you can to make use of your time on this planet. Any comments? Any questions? Meg's fantastic. I love Meg. I love Meg and her husband. They're such great friends of mine. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of tonight's episode of Loomer Unleashed, Kirk Elliott Precious Metals. Let's cut through the noise. The economy's shaky. Banks are failing. Inflation's eating your savings. But gold and silver, they've held their value through every single crisis. But don't get burned buying the wrong kind. Those shiny coins and ads, well, they carry a high price and high fees. But when you try to sell, you will get less. That's why Dr. Kirk Elliott does it differently. Real bullion, no games. Be sure that you visit kepm.com/Loomer and get the straight answers. Protect what matters. Before the next shot hits, make sure that you're invested in precious metals like gold and silver. Call the trusted professionals at Kirk Elliott Precious Metals today by visiting kepm.com. You can fill out the contact form. The team of trusted professionals at Kirk Elliott Precious Metals will definitely hook you up, answer all your questions and your concerns. Or if you don't want to fill out the contact form, you can call them every single day of the week, 720-605-3900. Again, that's 720-605-3900. Let them know that Laura Loomer sent you. And again, they have a special landing page for the viewers of Loomer Unleashed, and they definitely pay close attention to all your comments, your questions, your needs, anything that you may have a question about. They're there to answer. Dr. Kirk Elliott has been on the program multiple times, and if you want to learn more about him, you can go back in the archive in the Rumble library on my Rumble channel, rumble.com/Laura Loomer. We have several interviews archived with him, and you can hear his perspective. And he's very ideologically aligned with the viewers here on Loomer Unleashed. He supports President Trump. He's America First. He supports free speech, which is why he, of course, is a sponsor of our program, Loomer Unleashed. So be sure that you check it out. Great company. Get a lot of positive reviews and comments from the viewers of Loomer Unleashed, and they have nothing but positive things to say. So definitely call them, kepm.com/Loomer, or call Dr. Kirk at 720-605-3900. It's a great time to invest in gold and silver and protect your financial future and diversify your portfolio. I'll take a couple comments. Have any questions? We are live right now. Please be sure that you repost the live link on Rumble and X, rumble.com/Laura Loomer. Let's see what else. A lot going on. In addition to President Trump revoking these visas of Chinese students, the White House actually announced that they were interested in vetting. They were interested in carrying out vetting of the social media accounts of foreign students. And obviously, I'm always talking about the vetting crisis and how I would really love to be involved in vetting. And it's kind of funny. The media loves just, making everything I say. It doesn't matter what I say. They always make it into a big deal. I said that it would be a dream job, which it would be, to carry out the vetting of foreign students who are trying to come into our country so that I could find excuses, legitimate excuses, based off receipts and evidence, of course, to block them from coming into our country. And so a lot of people actually said that I'd be great for the job. And Meghan McCain, of all people, it was kind of surprising. I think I've sparred with her a couple times online. She used to actually have me blocked, unblocked me, urged Trump to hire Laura Loomer to research foreign students all day and find an excuse to block them. So that was very nice. That was very nice of Meghan McCain to say that about me. We can scroll down and see the article. Conservative commentator Meghan McCain offered her seal of approval on Wednesday for Laura Loomer to work in the Trump administration and vet the social media accounts of foreign students. Loomer, the far-right activist and longtime conspiracy theorist, that's what they love to say, is best known for her outlandish rhetoric and having the ear of President Trump. The White House is considering doing vetting on the social media accounts of foreign students. Sounds like a dream job for me. I would love to research foreign students all day and find an excuse to block them from coming into our country based on their radicalism. Sign me up. McCain, the former co-host of The View, turned online content creator, agreed with Loomer, writing, legit, give her this job. So that's great. It's nice that even people who have disagreed with me in the past think that I'm qualified for that position. And then there was a Daily Mail article about it as well. Let's go ahead and get that posted up on the screen. The Daily Mail decided to talk about it too. Laura Loomer reveals dream job in White House as Trump turbocharges war on Ivy League schools and migrants. Far-right activist Laura Loomer has revealed her dream job in Trump's White House just as the administration escalates its crackdown on international students and elite universities. Loomer's tweet came hours after an internal State Department cable revealed that the Trump administration has ordered a freeze on new student visa interviews in anticipation of expanded surveillance protocols. The administration plans to implement sweeping new social media screenings for all foreign students seeking to study in the United States. Again, just another testament to President Trump's excellent leadership. No other president has done this before, and it's really just such a no-brainer. Why do we have so many hostile anti-American students from foreign nations in our country? President Trump is doing what needs to be done to protect students, American students on these college campuses, and also to protect our national security. So bravo to President Trump. And, you know, it's great that they're doing this over at the State Department too. And as I've shown, right, there are some people in the White House and some people in the administration who could use some extra help with vetting, right? There seems to be a bit of a vetting crisis, and I would love to offer my services to assist in any capacity whatsoever, because I support President Trump, I support his agenda, and I want to make America great again. I want to make America safe again, and having proper vetting is a great way to do it. So I would definitely be interested in assisting with these vetting operations. See. Let's see what people are saying. Oh, well, thank you to Fly Dog for gifting several subscriptions. Again, if you want to subscribe to my program to support the work I'm doing here, $7 a month. Click the Get Loomered button in the bottom of the Rumble channel there. And you can subscribe for $7 a month. They're $70 a year. So thank you so much for those gifted subscriptions. I really appreciate it. Let's see. Somebody said, Marnie said, did Teddy love his first beach experiment? So I took Teddy to the beach the other day, my new puppy. And he didn't really like the water. I think because he's a puppy, he was a little scared. It was a little wavy and kind of, the waves were a little rough compared to the previous day. So I think the waves scared him, but he definitely loved having all that sand to dig in. I mean, he loves digging holes in the back of my yard, and I'm always like, no, Teddy, bad boy. So he loved digging in the sand on the beach. He really enjoyed that. He definitely liked his time at the beach. The water, not so much. The Flaw Hustler said they need to be interested in hiring you to vet. Maybe someday. Be sure that you're following me on X at Laura Loomer and also on X at Loomer Unleashed. I have to travel next week to Washington, D.C. because I have to attend my deposition for Bill Maher and HBO. As you know, I'm suing them in my lawsuit against Bill Maher and HBO for defamation. And so I have to be there to prep for my deposition with my attorney and also attend my deposition. And so Loomer Unleashed is going to be next Friday. I wish that I could do multiple episodes next week, but unfortunately I have to attend some legal meetings for some personal matters, including my own lawsuit against Bill Maher. And it's very costly. Every time I have to go to one of these depositions, I have to pay for flights. I have to pay for my attorney's flights. I have to pay for hotels. And so if you want to support my legal fees, you can do so by going to, my Give, Send, Go. It's the givesendgo.com/Loomer Lawfare. givesendgo.com/Loomer Lawfare. This is the Lawfare Fund to support my legal battles, whether it's, getting letters threatening me for my reporting from Soros entities like I did several months ago, or having to travel to attend these depositions. It helps cover the cost of the fees that I am accumulating for, being under attack in the media. So definitely visit my Give, Send, Go if you want to support that. But I will be in Washington, D.C. this next week for my deposition not even allowed to talk about it legally because, well, they want me to keep it all confidential. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how Bill Maher can defame me and falsely accuse me of sleeping with the president and say terrible things about me, horrible things about me, defame my character, and then, well, face no consequences. And then he wants to demand that everything from the deposition is private and confidential, including the deposition tapes. I just think it's so outrageous, but it is what it is, right? We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. I will keep you all updated next week about what happens with that deposition. But with that, thank you for tuning in tonight. Please be sure that you're following me on Rumble, rumble.com/Laura Loomer, and also on X at Laura Loomer and at Loomer Unleashed. Be sure that you're following along my website, loomer.com for exclusive updates and reports, exclusive investigative reports every single day that you're not going to see anywhere else. So be sure that you're following me for all of that. And I will see you next week. As I said, no Loomer Unleashed on Tuesday because I'm traveling. No Loomer Unleashed on Thursday because I'm traveling. I'll see you next Friday for another episode of Loomer Unleashed. But be sure that you are monitoring my social media because even though I'm not doing a show in the beginning of the week next week, I will be updating my socials and posting all types of investigative reports. So with that, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
There is a young female journalist, conservative journalist, by the name of Laura Loomer.
If America's men acted like Laura Loomer, our problems will be fixed in about 5 minutes.
Chained herself to
She
Twitter.
chained herself.